Hey guys, Jay here again from Java Group Business Consultancy. Today's video, we're going to be tackling Scrum versus Kanban. So in one of my previous videos, we talked about different methodologies, and one of them was Agile. And this one, we're going to be jumping into what is Scrum, what is Kanban, what do they actually mean? So key takeaways from this video. So hopefully you're going to be able to understand what is Scrum, what is Kanban, how do they work, why are they needed, and what roles are required to be able to engage with them. So what is Scrum? But these are both frameworks inside the Agile methodology. So very quickly, if you haven't seen the other video, the Agile methodology is an approach to getting work completed in an agile way or in an iterative way, being able to change the course, being able to do things in smaller chunks and faster to gain customer value in a better way. So what is Scrum? So you may have heard the term from rugby. So it is taken from that, and basically it's trying to get a small team to come together to be able to push hard on a set of features for a common goal and be able to eventually complete the objective. So what we can see here on the image on the right-hand side is on the very left-hand side, we've got a whole series of boxes, and that generally is called a backlog. And then what we do is we take those boxes and we get a small subset of those boxes and we put that into what we call a sprint or an iteration or a time box. It's got lots of different names. And then what we do is we push that towards the rocket. So go live, deployment. We look to get that out. We make it shippable or deployable or meet the definition of done. And then we cycle back. We go back to the backlog, grab another small chunk of work, we complete it inside the sprint, and we keep going and going and going. And as we're doing this, we're learning, we're getting better, we're getting faster. As a team, we're working more cohesively, estimates are getting better, and all of those sorts of things. But what we're doing is we're breaking off a little chunk. We're setting a goal for that sprint. So in one of the other videos, I spoke about upgrading a system. So we could be, the goal of the sprint could be upgrade user login. And then all of the tickets within that are to do with changing the way that the user logs into the system. So our goal is to complete that, and we work with these small chunks of tickets, and then by the time we get to the end of that iteration or time box, which is generally, in my experience, it's 2 weeks has worked well. 3 or 4 gets a little bit long and everyone gets a little bit fatigued and tired and can't remember what happened at the start. And 1 week generally seems to be far too short, but that's something that the team can decide upon. There's also several ceremonies that happen around Scrum. So you have things like your kickoff meetings. So right at the start, you plan for the sprint, you bring your tickets in, you discuss what the goal's going to be, and you identify exactly what's going on. And then each day you go through, you go to work and you undertake your work, you execute upon it within your Scrum team. And there's a number of steps that occur there. So you'll be doing things like estimations or backlog refinement, perhaps, being able to understand what's coming next and how that's all looking, where the change of value is within the business. You'll be doing daily stand-ups quite often. And then as you roll towards the end, you'll be looking at things like showcasing. You'll be looking at things like your retrospectives, where you sit down and sort of have a no-blame post-mortem. So what went well? What didn't go so well? What should we try better in the next one? And then feed that into the next one. And you just keep going through these cycles where you pick up a chunk of work, you set the goal, you keep checking in the whole way along, you deliver, you decide, did it go well? Did it not? What should we do next time? You take those learnings and you grab the next chunk of work and you bring that in and you go again. And you just keep going and going and going until such time as that backlog is complete. So that's effectively what Scrum is. It works quite well. I've managed a number of teams through this Scrum methodology, and it's been really quite effective in ensuring that everybody's aligned and that we're able to have these little value drops all the way along so that our customers and our stakeholders can see tangible benefits coming out the back end that are working and functioning exactly like they should. It also really helps having hard markers in the sand to be able to say, okay, at the end of this 2-week time box, we will be done these set of features and we will be able to deploy them and our customers will be able to interact with them and so on and so forth. So it gives you some really good hard markers so that the team have got a goal to push towards and be able to deliver upon, but also everybody else externally is able to see those value drops and being able to interact with them. So it can work quite well. Kanban. So Kanban is a different framework, again, within the Agile methodology, and it's all about continuous flow. So it's all about seeing work just continually move. So there's really no fixed goal. There's no time boxes. There's no set periods around this. It's just a case of continuously moving work from to do. So from the very left-hand side of a Kanban board is generally where it will start. So you take it again out of the backlog and it goes into to do. Then it'll move its way across the Kanban board all the way to done. Now, people do get confused because Kanban boards are often used within Scrum projects as well. It's just a great visualization tool to see where anything's up to at any point in time. They've got other names in other methodologies or other industries. I know a lot of lean manufacturing use very similar boards. I worked in printing many years ago, and we'd use a very similar board to Kanban to be able to say, well, here's all the work, which was our backlog, and then we'd pull them from that backlog and we'd put it into do so that we could make the plan and say, okay, this week this printing press is going to be running these jobs at these times. And then as they were being done, the printers were coming in and they were changing the statuses, and then once the printing was done and it might have had to go off for binding or cutting or folding or whatever that case was, the card would then move through the different statuses with those different post-production teams until such time as the product left the business and it was exited off the board as being done and completed. So we had something through that lean manufacturing. In software development, it's not too much different, but a Kanban board isn't Kanban. Kanban is just the continuous flow and the moving of features through. Generally, what will happen within this is that you will set up meetings and discussions amongst your team at set intervals, but they won't follow that same thing as Scrum, where at the start of your 2-week block you plan, and at the end of your 2-week block you do your retrospective and those sorts of things. These will more be based on a calendar. So maybe it's the first of the month we get together and we have a discussion about how last month went. Maybe it's the first of the fortnight. And then at the end of the fortnight or the month, we'll get together and we'll say, well, what would we like to apply next month to this process? You also might have showcases in there where at specific periods you show what you've completed and how many more boards have moved into that status of done. And then equally with a Kanban board, you can have those defined periods where when you're looking at that done pile or that done column or that done list, once you get to a certain point of value in that list, you can then schedule a deployment and push those things out. This works really, really well. I've enjoyed working with Kanban. I've had teams on, worked with teams on both. Kanban, currently I'm working with a business and we're doing all of their support tickets. So anything that's in production is being run through Kanban. So it's just a continuous flow of ticket work through their support team, bug fixes and minor enhancements and improvements that are being done to the production system. While over in the new development side, what we're doing is we're doing a full Scrum iteration where we're defining the tickets. We're bringing them in at the start of a 2-week, they call it an iteration, so a sprint, a time box. We're bringing it in at the start of that and we're deciding what the goal would be. We're working towards that goal, and at the end of that time box, we're deciding, have we passed, have we failed, how did it all go, doing the retrospectives, having the showcases, and all those sorts of things. So you can run multiple within the same business, that's no issue there. I've even had different teams, so development teams, one who just preferred to work Kanban and the work they were doing made more sense, should just be a continuous flow without these stop-start sort of milestones, whereas the other one, we needed the structure, we needed, because it just worked better for the team involved. So there are those those differences there, and both are good. It just depends on the work that you're doing, your management style, and what the team really, how the team work or how they want to interact with the work that they're doing. So how do I choose the right approach? So we largely just talked over all of this. So your project team, how are they going to self-organize? How do they adapt? How do they work? That will be a major contributing factor in there. Delivery requirements. So how often do people want to engage? How will they engage? What do they feel is important and why? So also, as I mentioned before, I had a couple of different dev teams working in different ways. So one of the Kanban teams that I was running, they were running Kanban because from their business's perspective, they didn't want to be disrupted every single 2 or 3 weeks with a series of showcase meetings as the product owner, and being able to provide their sign off and those sorts of things. They wanted it to work for them because of their cyclical business. So there were periods of sort of 2 or 3 months, 3 months, twice a year, where it was just a total lockout. You couldn't get any time in anyone's calendar. They were too busy because the business itself was focused on delivering some really strategic operational outcomes. And at that point, unfortunately, this specific IT team, there were no deployments that were allowed during those periods, and then there was just no ability to be able to get anyone from the business to come back and have a look at what we'd actually developed. So we switched to a Kanban methodology with them, which meant that the business could engage with the project team as and when they were available. So in their down periods, it was a lot more frequent. We were often meeting weekly, and just catching up with the business and letting them know how we were going and what we were proceeding, and we were getting things signed off really, really fast. And then as we went into those busy periods throughout the year, it would often be 2 or 3 months without hearing from anybody, and being able to get those sign off and those approvals. So you've really got to be mindful of not only how your team itself works, but how you interact with the larger organization. Budgets and timeframes. Kanban can be seen as a little dangerous if you're not managing timeframes, if you're not managing estimates, and if you're not managing your costs. Scrum is often a little bit easier to do that because you can define, oh, I have a 2-week block and I know that 2-week block costs me X, and I know that it is 2 weeks. There's no variation there. You know what's going in, you know what's coming out, and you've got a really good idea of that. It's also a lot easier with approval gates. So once we've completed X, you will approve it, and then we'll be able to move on to Y. Whereas Kanban's a little more fluid, and so it's more about just constantly feeding the team, constantly keeping that work coming out of the backlog and into to do, constantly making sure that it is valuable items, and ensuring that flow maintains, ensuring that the fires are stoked and that the team's constantly moving, which can be a little bit harder to define value and delivery and timeframes in there. And that last one, value and proof. I've often seen businesses are more interested in doing sort of time-boxed initiatives or Scrum initiatives because they say, okay, we will give you 10 weeks. And in that 10 weeks, you must do A, B, and C. And so it makes it really clear to be able to fill up your time boxes and be able to come back with a plan and say, okay, well, as a team, we've sat down and we're going to do these 2-week cycles. There's going to be 5 of them. And at the end of at the end of the second one, we'll deliver A. At the end of the third one, we'll do B, and at the end of the 5th one, we'll do C, and there it is. And that can go a long way to building trust, especially after people have been burnt or hurt in terms of failed projects that have overrun time, overrun budget, been costly, value hasn't been delivered upon, the team lost focus, they weren't coordinated enough, they weren't gelling well enough, all of those sorts of things. So you've got to kind of bring all of this in together. Can you swap and change? You can, definitely, but again, it can be disruptive, and it's got to be a team approach. The reason why you've got these methodologies, the reason why you've got these frameworks, the reason why we've got processes and steps and ceremonies and things in there is for the team. It's really to get this collaborative and cohesive engagement going, to get good oversight over exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and who's responsible for doing it. So if you are looking at changing them, sure, you can, but it needs to be worked in with the team. There's got to be good justification, and everybody needs to understand. So if you're being funded by an external business department, or you're being funded by a business as a whole, everyone needs to understand what's the change, what's the impact, why the shift. So in that project I gave before, where the business was busy during certain periods, we proposed to go Kanban. We were initially Scrum, and it was just causing a lot of disappointment for the team, with people not showing up to meetings from the business to be able to provide approval and sign off, and a lot of stress and angst in terms of having to chase people up. A lot of frustration from their side too, that we were distracting them, as they saw, we were distracting them in a busy period, and did we not understand that it was busy? Which of course we did. So we proposed to go Kanban, and sort of stepped out what that would mean and what the benefits would be for them, and they were more than happy with that. They knew the team were working well. They knew they were delivering well, and that there was no concerns there in terms of estimates or timeframes blowing out or budgets blowing out. They knew that there was a good enough control system in place to ensure that value was always being prioritized and provided, and there was more than enough proof that we delivered in the 6 months from pulling it out of a burning platform to getting to this point, to ensure that we could deliver really effectively. So you've got to keep all of these things in mind as you're choosing that right approach, and if you're wanting to change the approach that the team are currently doing. So what roles are needed? You've got to have governance, you've got to have management, you've got to have execution. So your governance is, as it says there, it's really just looking at overseeing and reviewing items, making sure that you are scoring the goals, making sure that you are within the rules, making sure that everything's being done in accordance with what you said and what's being expected of you and what you're allowed to do. Management itself, so we touched on before self-organizing teams, and we'll talk about this later, but ultimately there needs to be somebody there. So whether it's a servant leader, whether it's a direct manager, whether it's supportive function managers, such as a dev manager overseeing all of the devs, and a testing manager overseeing all the testers, and a design manager over the UXs, or the business analysts, or whatever the case is. But there needs to be some form of management structure there to give the people guidance and understanding, to give them the ability to learn and educate, to give them the ability to feedback and share information across teams, and just to be generally guided in the right direction and path forward. And then we've been talking about them the whole time, but the execution team, you're not going to get anything done without them. So that's your developers, that's your testers, that's your BAs, your designers, it's your functional consultants, your architects. It's everyone who's involved in ensuring that it gets done. Project managers, scrum masters, all that sort of stuff. Any role that you've heard of that assists with actually getting things deployed and things to market, you 100% need to organize them. And I guess that's where the management comes in terms of making sure that the right skill sets are in the right teams and are working on the right things at the right time, in the right sort of coordination. And again, the governance comes back in to make sure that what you're actually doing is in accordance with what's been set out and mandated. So a good idea of that would be, from a governance perspective, we're a ERP company, and we run SAP or SAP. So everything that we do has to be within SAP, and it must be organized that way. So the governance guys are making sure that the right tables are being used, that the right components of the system are being used, and that we're working in the right way and not deviating too much from that. From a management aspect, it's saying, okay, well, this is an inventory product. So we need to make sure that the team that we compile together have the right tools, that they are the right people, that they're well versed in what is being laid out from us by the approach and the governance aspect of it. And then the execution team are the people getting in there and making sure that they are actually deploying that they're following the plan, that they're getting supported, and that they're doing exactly what they need to. What tools am I going to need? Okay, so just at a high level, and take as much of this as you want or you don't, but a visual task board. So Kanban board, a visual task board, I think it's referred to in Lean. You need some way of being able to visually represent how much work have we got? How many tasks do we have? And where are they? So that the entire team can see them. Anyone can see them. A ticketing tool. So some tool, and again, these don't have to be digital. They can be manual paper cards or whatever works for your team and your organization. But you need a ticketing tool. You need a way of creating the work items and ensuring nothing gets lost. So if and this forms your backlog and then eventually moves on to your visual task boards, but you need some way of being able to store all of those ideas, all those different components that make up whatever the value is you're trying to deliver. You need some way of storing that. A documentation tool. Nothing frustrates me more than hearing that Agile or because we're Agile or because we're DevOps, we don't need to document. That is garbage. You always need to document. The documents can just be built up over a period of time as you complete the work, as opposed to having to be written in entirety at the very beginning and being set into stone. The documentation can also change. So I say there that you need a documentation tool. You need some way of storing it could be handwritten documents. It could be Word documents in a shared drive. It could be a tool like Confluence or something like that. It just needs to be a place where the documentation can be written, can be stored, can be accessed by anyone who needs it, and most importantly, it can be version controlled. So when there is a change made, you update the version and everybody knows that the latest version is the newest information. You also have the ability to go back through the versions and be able to see what has changed. Why is there a new version? What has changed about the system to drive this? So a documentation tool is critical. Reporting and analytics. You're going to need this not only for your sponsors to ensure that they're getting out the value that they're putting in, but the team themselves, I found that the team themselves really want to see reports, really want to see analysis on how are they going as a team? Are they improving? Are they doing the right thing? Are they working in the right way? Could there be something better to deliver upon and get done? That's where the real value I found out of the reporting and the analytics tools is these teams being able to see metrics about themselves and how they're interacting, and then thriving upon coming up with new ideas on how they can work better, how they can make that metric look better, how they can grow it, how they can consistently be improving. And it also doesn't help if they're doing that to then be able to share that with the broader business so that, again, other teams are learning, other teams are growing, and then your sponsors, your stakeholders, and those sorts of things are getting an understanding of where you are in the journey and how it's all moving. So definitely recommend all of those tools. They don't have to be fancy, they don't have to be expensive, but they need to exist to ensure that nothing gets missed, no one gets lost, and everything can be retained for perpetuity. So getting started. So step one, set up a meeting, get everybody involved. Work out how you're going to work, how everybody wants to work, what does the project look like, what is the expectations around delivery and time frame, and how everything's going to get deployed, and get some sort of idea from the team in terms of how do they want to deliver this, how do they see it coming together, how's that all going to work. Write down your agreed set of rules and how you're going to engage. Get that written down and agreed to, so that the team, the execution team that presumably you're going to be either a part of or you're going to be managing, all understand what's expected of them and how they're expected to work together. It's equally vitally important, though, for the sponsors, the stakeholders, the business people to know what is expected of them. How much time do they have to put in? What are they responsible for? When are they going to get called upon? Those sorts of items. Calculate your costs, your time frames, and your milestone dates. So determine what's your burn rate for your team per sprint or per day or per week or per month, those sorts of things. How long do you think the work's going to take? When are you going to have those key milestones delivered? Maybe it's at the end of every sprint, maybe it's every couple of sprints, maybe you're going to work on a specific user type, and once that specific user type is complete, you're then going to pass it over. Or maybe it's a particular product, and once that product is finished, and maybe that'll be multiple sprints, you're going to hand that over. Or if it's Kanban, maybe once you get to so much value being delivered, that's going to be your milestone date. And every time you hit that value target, that's going to be your key milestone or your trigger to push that off. Set up your tools and start to coordinate your approach. This is screamingly important. We talked about tools before, but everyone needs to buy into the tool. Everybody needs to buy into the use of the tool. Everyone needs to understand how they're used and how they're going to approach them. Otherwise, you're just going to miss out. There are going to be your ticketing tool isn't going to get used, and then people are going to wonder where their work's going and why it's not making it to the board. In terms of the visual task board, people are going to be wondering, what's the status of this? Is it ready for me to engage with or not? How does this work? Where is it up to, and when is it going to be delivered? And that's inside the team and outside. You know, if people don't know that there's a functional specification somewhere or some other form of document somewhere that they need to be updating as they go, a technical landscape or application landscape or an environment schema or something like that, if they don't know where they are and who's responsible for updating and how often, it's not going to get done. And then you're going to get to the end of a project and there's going to be no documentation and no one's going to understand how it comes together. And then some poor person is going to have to support it. And it's just all a waste of time. And then the last one, I guess, is make the ideas reality. Get started, start moving, start adopting, start changing, start implementing, start experimenting, and just get moving. Start showing that value. All right, so thanks very much. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Scrum versus Kanban video, and you've got a little bit more of an understanding in terms of how it all interacts, how it all works, and what the value is around those. If you've got any further questions at all or ideas for future content, please drop me a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. So until next time, keep innovating. Thanks.